Why Russia can't achieve air superiority in Ukraine? Why is Russia using T-14 Armata main battle tanks in Ukraine? Up until last week, the deployment of the Armata in combat had not been confirmed. Still, a recently released video claiming to show an Armata firing on Ukrainian positions circulated. While it is still unclear whether these MBTs have been accepted into service by Russia's military, it has been confirmed that the Armata has been used to support the country's offensive operations in Ukraine. While the Kremlin would like Kyiv to believe these new MBTs are unmatched in their capabilities, the true extent of the Armata's prowess remains a mystery. Moscow claimed over a decade ago that more than 2,000 T-14 MBTs would enter service with the Russian military, but some analysts believe that no more than a few dozen Armata tanks had been built as of last year. Throughout its invasion of Ukraine, Moscow has sent thousands of its MBTs to their graves. Others have been captured or left behind in battle. If the Armata is in the top shape the Kremlin claimed at the outset of the war, why weren't these supposedly formidable armored vehicles delivered then to aid its war efforts? Since the Kremlin notoriously exaggerates its military capabilities, the Armata may not be the unmatched powerhouse Moscow claims. The T-14 Armata was developed in accordance with the Object 197 program to replace the T-90 MBT. Back in 2015, the Armata made its first public appearance when a few T-14 prototypes were detected in Albino. A few months later, the Russian Defense Ministry formally declared the new tank at the country's annual Victory Day parade. In 2020, Russia's Minister of Industry and Trade revealed that the new tank had been combat tested in Syria. However, 2 years later, several news outlets confirmed that the Armata's development had been halted. Equipped with notable advancements, the next-generation Armata is believed by some experts to be a near peer to several Western MBTs. In fact, the tank's exterior reflects the design of Western tanks, including its hull and its long, boxy turret. Despite the Armata's claimed capabilities and specs, the simple fact is that the tank has never been tested in battle. Considering Kyiv's highly anticipated counteroffensive, Moscow's tank abilities will be paramount for the country's long-term success in the war. Over the last year, Russian crews have struggled to properly maintain older tanks due to lack of materials and upkeep knowledge. Throwing a brand new tank into the mix will likely only complicate matters. NATO member states have recently pledged several advanced MBTs to aid Ukraine's defensive efforts, including M1 Abrams, Leopards, and Challengers. If the T-14 is unable to thwart the advance of these superior tanks, Moscow will be in big trouble. Why Russia cannot achieve air superiority? 18 months into the Ukraine-Russia war, Russian troops still have not achieved air superiority as the term is defined by the U.S. Air Force. That is, Russian troops have not secured a degree of control over Ukrainian skies sufficient to permit them to conduct operations at a given time and place without prohibitive interference from air and missile threats. The underlying reasons for Russia's inability to freely operate in Ukrainian airspace cannot be unpacked without studying Russian failures in the war's opening act, a complex topic that deserves its own write-up. Suffice it to say, the Kremlin invasion was drawn up according to a series of political assumptions about Ukraine's will and ability to fight that did not reflect the facts on the ground. The invading Russian forces faced much stiffer than expected Ukrainian resistance. Russia's aircraft losses were not nearly as steep as its ground forces, with the British Royal Air Force counting a modest 86 fixed-wing aircraft and many helicopters destroyed since the war began, precisely because Russia's military leadership conceded early on that their aircraft cannot freely operate in much of Ukrainian airspace and were forced to adjust their operations accordingly. The Russian aerospace forces' reluctance to run extensive operations involving tactical aircraft hampered the invasion in its crucial early stages, forcing the Russians to instead rely on standoff munitions launched from friendly territory. Ukrainian forces have leveraged their broad selection of Western-provided air defense systems, from U.S. Patriot batteries to German Iris-T systems, as well as older helical launchers and various man-portable air defense systems to impose costs on and ultimately restrict the VKS ability to support Russian ground forces. But it's not all good news for Ukrainian troops. Despite being forced to operate in a reduced capacity, VKS has exploited its overwhelming advantage in standoff firepower to saturate targets across Ukraine with missiles launched outside of Ukrainian territory. Russian forces have tried to compensate for their inability to freely conduct air operations in Ukrainian skies with relentless drone strikes against Ukrainian infrastructure, potentially forcing Kyiv to expend scarce surface-to-air missiles on Iranian-provided Shade 136 and other drones that are much more plentiful and less expensive. Though Russia is unlikely to achieve anything approaching unfettered dominance in Ukrainian airspace for the foreseeable future, Russian troops have secured what defense researcher Justin Bronk described as a measure of localized superiority in parts of southeastern Ukraine. More importantly, in light of Ukraine's ongoing counteroffensive, Russia has denied Ukrainian forces control over stretches of airspace in the southern regions where they are currently attacking. This disadvantage has rendered Ukrainian troops vulnerable to Russian helicopters and drones working in tandem with artillery strikes to hinder Ukrainian advances. The focus at this stage in the war is no longer on which side has air superiority. Instead, both Russia and Ukraine are more concerned with preventing each other from establishing and expanding pockets of localized air superiority across the line of contact.
Основний вогонь! Міна!